Hi, my name is Rehan, and this is episode one of an ongoing series on technology in the local area. Today I'm going to be interviewing Sahil Sinha of Ohava. They do open source computing efforts and consulting work in different marketplaces. All right. So my name is Rehan Mahmood, and I'm starting a new project. It's going to be a show that I'm hopefully doing for Fairfax County and anywhere I travel where I meet new and interesting people or see interesting things. And I record it and I talk about it and I spread it to the world. My passion has always been technology, amongst other things. So today's topic will start off and kick off with technology and what's happening in the local area. This is my first iteration, so forgive me if things are a little hacked together. It'll get better as time progresses, and as I get better at doing the production. Um, as far as my background, I work in technology. I work in mobility technology. That's my interest, and I've been doing it for about 8 years, and I love it. But what I do love also more than that is entrepreneurship and the idea of creating that community and that interest to do something for yourself and build a community of like-minded peers. With that being said, I'd like to transition and introduce my colleague, my long-term friend, Sahil, and then may I pronounce your last name?
Yeah.
Sinha?
Sinha. Yeah.
Sinha. Actually, kick it off. Sahil, tell me about yourself. What you've been doing, how we know each other,
Sure.
and
Well, first, thank you for including me in your inaugural production. It's really exciting, and I'm so happy to be part of it. We've known each other for quite a long time, almost 10 years now. We went to high school together for the brief period that I actually attended, and we've been friends ever since. And it's always good to connect because I feel like we're always simpatico. As far as background goes, I've been doing a company for about 6, 7 years now. Pretty much from the time I was 20 years old or so, and that's really what I've been doing.
we have to do the background on this though, like
Okay.
more granular detail, because
Okay.
this is an interesting story of how you actually started out. So
Right.
so I've known him for a couple years, and we met each other in middle school and in high school.
Yeah.
And back then, I don't know if you had a vision to do your own entrepreneurship or start your own company, but where did that spark and where did that start? You know, I mean,
Okay.
there was a series of events that happened, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was what you would call a troubled child, and not from like an angsty perspective necessarily, but I like to get into trouble, and I followed that path for quite some time, and where I ended up was in jail for about a year, and when I was in jail, I it's a good place to think. You can't do much else other than think. So I had a chance to reflect and and think about one what landed me there, and two, kind of where I wanted to go from there. And I've always had a lifelong love of technology. I mean, I think I had my first computer when I was 2 years old. I was on the internet as soon as you could be on the internet. Uh,
Like back in the day, like you're talking about, like, you know, when it was, we were like kind of like the guinea pigs of the new 2.0, right?
well, right, we're the first generation to grow up with computing as a household staple, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're very
IRC
fortunate. Yeah,
and like
yeah.
all those things, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And even before that, just your green and black monitors, right?
Yeah.
Where you didn't have a GUI or anything like that. So computers have always been a very large part of my life. Both my parents work in technology, and they were very excited about introducing me to new concepts. I think I started programming probably when I was 4 or 5 years old or something like that. And I mean, just basic. I mean, that's not real programming, but I was messing around with basic when I was pretty young. And really, for me, I think the interest peaked when I would play games and something would go wrong with my games, and I would need to find a way to fix them.
What
or
games
whatever.
did you play?
Oh gosh, so many, right? I mean, everything from Doom to I remember there was one Western game called like Mad Dog McCree, which was like this stop motion, or not stop motion, but like live action game.
I remember the live action was really like
really
a big
neat.
thing.
It was really cool.
Like you were in part of the movie or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. And so like again, I love games, and things would break back in the day, right? Computers nowadays are a little bit more intuitive as far as getting them to do what you want them to do. But when we were young, I feel that there was a little bit of elbow grease that you had to put in to make things go the way you wanted them to go. And so, like I was saying, I had this lifelong love of computing. And I wound up in this situation which I think most people would view as unfortunate, right? But I don't necessarily view it that way. So I'm in jail, and I'm looking around, and I noticed that there was a disproportionate number of African Americans and Hispanics in jail, and so I'm just thinking, well, why is this happening? It doesn't make any sense. So there has to be some sort of inequity in society that is causing this to take place, right? And for me, the natural connection was that, hey, technology solves so many problems. It opens up the world. It lets you go learn anything you want to do. That putting technology in more people's hands will reduce these type of social problems that the less affluent communities experience. And again, that was kind of a spark. It's not necessarily what's been my motivation throughout the entire process, but this level of inequality has been something that was very stark in that situation, and I wanted to do something to address it. I knew that the world needed to change just a little bit, and with that realization, coupled with my love of computing, I said, okay, the world needs to change, and the way that I know how to do it and the way that I want to do it is via computing, and so that's where kind of it started. I would sit in my cell, and I would scribble in my notebooks with a non-firm pen, because in jail they don't want you to have things that can be like weapons.
And let's just be clear, this is like straight up jail, like we picture jail. Like
Right,
it's
well,
like solitary confinement, or not solitary, but just the fact that you have a schedule and
yeah, I was confined, and
Yeah.
meals were at set times,
Yeah.
and I would wear a jumpsuit and all that.
I'm not trying to smile. I'm just
no,
like
it's-
this is like
I honestly feel that it's one of the best experiences of my life. Yeah.
seriously.
I really do. I really feel that way.
So for the viewers out there, if you're looking for a good time,
Go to jail.
Go to jail. but okay, so you're writing, you're taking notes.
So about halfway through, I qualified for the work release program, which meant that for the last portion of my stay, my incarceration, I was able to go get work, and there's all sorts of privileges that comes with being in the work release program. The major one being the ability to get your own books. So I was able to, my parents are wonderful. They've supported me my whole life, and they've encouraged my love of learning, and I will always be grateful to them for that. But I communicated some books that I wanted, and I would get books, I would read books, and I would dream on paper, is maybe the best way to put it. And really, the same dreams that I was putting down on paper then are starting to come to fruition now. And so either from other people or from us. So I think it's a very exciting thing. All I want to see is the things that I envisioned as far as the computing environment come to life. I see computing and personal computing and enterprise computing working in a certain way, and as long as that has not happened, I have work to do, and when it does happen, I'm going to be very happy.
So taking inspiration. So you had this catalyst moment.
I did.
So
yes.
what else is your inspiration? So you read a couple books. Well, what are some of the books? I mean,
Well, the books weren't necessarily the inspiration type of books. They were more your dry technical books.
Okay.
So like Unix internals or something like that. Right?
Okay.
I mean, that's
good bedtime reading.
Yeah, exactly. But I've always loved literature, and if you were going to ask me, what literature inspires me, I think John Steinbeck does a really good job of exploring the human condition. I think that his books can be particularly inspirational. The book East of Eden by John Steinbeck has a phrase or a Hebrew word called timshel, right? And the concept timshel, they go into it in the book for a while, how to translate the word timshel. And in the end, I think they settle on the best translation as being thou mayest, in the context of thou mayest triumph over sin. And I've never, necessarily been a religious person, but that notion of choice and that we are always in control, to a degree, of what we do and how we react to things and what we put into this world, I think is a very empowering notion. And so that's one example of a literature that inspires me. But really every day I'm inspired. I'm inspired by people like you, by people I meet all the time. I don't know. I feel like inspiration is everywhere.
You didn't say your mom. She's gonna get angry at you. That's the
No,
that's the cue always there.
No.
But no, that's great. So I'm trying to now understand now. At what point did you say that I need to incorporate myself? I need to build something that's an organization.
We incorporated when I was in jail.
Really?
Yeah. So it was immediate, right? I mean, it's a very stark experience, right? It's just, it hits you, right? So once you have that epiphany, there's no time to wait anymore. You have to get going right away. So yeah, my business partner Scott Anderson came to visit me. We got the paper signed and we incorporated.
In jail.
While I was in jail. Yes.
Wow. And so was it a 2-man company in the beginning? How did you?
We were 4.
Back then it was called something else, though, right?
It was. It was called I Know Solutions.
Yeah.
And there were 4 of us. We thought, hey, we're all good friends. Let's work together, right? And I think it was so valuable, and we had a ton of fun, and we did a lot of things. But as everything in life, you grow and you change, and things evolve, and so now there are 2 principles of the business, but we've grown since then, obviously, and I'm sorry, I lost track of
No, I was just trying to figure out. So we're building this timeline. So now you've incorporated.
Okay.
You got a team of 4.
Mhm.
And what was the point? This is from somebody who hasn't started his own business. Hopefully soon that changes. But for those who are looking at this and saying, okay, I got an inspiration. I want to incorporate. Now what? What did you do? Did you buy an office space, or was that important, or did you start building a website? Did you start crafting a business plan? What's going on?
So, for me, I'm a big proponent of experimentation, and there's a lot of people nowadays advocating this approach. The lean startup, Eric Ries
Yep.
or whatever, where you want to get things out into the market as soon as possible, and kind of have that lean, agile mentality, and I think inadvertently I prescribe to that. I don't think I formally said, hey, we need to be lean and agile and deploy products quickly, but that's what we did. So our emphasis has always been open source. I strongly believe that in the next 10 years, 99% of software that people use is going to be open source, and I believe open source is a world changer.
I have to comment because I remember when I first discovered your business, and it was through when I used to work for Microsoft, and
Right.
I needed to invite as many people from the community, and you were one of the ones
Right.
gracious enough to come with Danny and all them
Right.
to my events, and you're talking about Microsoft that's so at the time was so not open source
Right.
and involved in the open source stack and communities. Then you coming in and telling me, oh wow, there's this other thing that's happening in society right now. There's this movement,
Right.
this revolution that's basically
Right.
happening. It was very
Right.
interesting.
Right.
But at the time, my colleagues, the people I'm going to school with, this is a new idea. So where did it actually be like, okay, this is part of my philosophy right now. This makes it accessible. It's also
Right. So I mean, I could talk for hours on the virtues of open source, but if we're talking from like a chronological perspective, the first time that I was exposed to open source was Linux in about 1996. So that's Wow, that's a long time ago.
This is like the BSD stuff, or what?
No, this is Linux.
Linux, okay.
Linux. And we stopped it on like a 386 or something like that, which wasn't an old computer at the time. And I was interested, right? And then I got to a point where I was unhappy with how my computing life was, and I decided, hey, I need to do something different, and I decided to commit myself fully to using Linux as my primary operating system. And I haven't looked back since. To me, open source is again the right way to do software development. I've seen how Linux and other open source projects have evolved over the years, and it's fast. You get new features that you can imagine something one day and it's reality the next. And it's because you have this worldwide group of passionate and dedicated developers who code because they love to code and because they're passionate about the projects that they're working on. So I don't know. There's tremendous value, and like I said, we can keep talking about open source. I'd be happy to, but again, I'd probably take quite a bit of your time if I did.
No, that's fine. I mean, I can tell the passion. I think the cool thing is you use this as a platform for your business completely, hands down. That is.
Yeah, we eat our own dog food. Absolutely. Yeah. Everything that we do is open source. Everything that we use is open source. And so, as I was saying, from our inception, that's been kind of our core, right? Everything open source. So we've been experimenting by deploying any type of open source solution you can imagine. Everything from hardware to enterprise software, things like project management or customer relationship management, or even as far as EMR or electronic medical records, which are a pretty big deal. And really any software out there, there tends to be an open source analog, or the front runner is open source. So deploying these various types of software, experimenting with hardware, and getting them out into the field has been what I've been doing for the past 7 years. And learning the lessons there. What works in the wild? How do you manage upstream contributions? And I might be talking about things that nobody cares about right now, but these are just some of the lessons that we've learned. And there's a ton of them. I mean, I have literal notebooks full of things I've learned over the past 7 years. And I don't know.
So okay. So now that you've picked a niche, this is the niche, right?
I don't know. I don't think it's a niche.
Well, I mean, it's a niche of market, right? You have this specific segment of the market that you're attacking, or if you're not, it's not a specific segment. You're taking a specific technology or capability, and you're saying, let's expand it to all markets and build the market, build the marketplace for this, build the industry for this. Because I wouldn't say that there is an open source industry that's stable right now.
Yeah, there is. I mean, Red Hat is a $1 billion company.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So I have to think about it differently. So when a typical person like me as a consumer thinks about open source, I think about the fun open source, the stuff that I can do as an individual versus what's
like Firefox.
Firefox and the apps that are accessible to me for me to hack and modify for my one use case, right? And then you have Red Hat, of course, that is building this at an enterprise, building it for government, consulting for this for these massive undertakings and projects. Where do you see your vision for this company or your place in all that? You're just saying across the board, the whole smorgasbord, or are you still going back to the your original goal? It sounds like you still want your original goal, which is like mom and pop shops using the their own open source method for point of sale or something like that, versus DoD,
Sure. I think again the thing that I go back to is that computing is not as it should be. There's something wrong right now, and I know that's I'm not trying to be alarmist or anything like that, but you've seen Tron, right? We've all seen Tron probably, and this quote has informed kind of a good portion of my life, is that computers are for the users. The originator of the company in Tron, I don't remember what the name was. That's his quote.
Yeah, I forgot the name of it too. Yeah.
Computers are for the users, and I think every day we're improving. right? Every day we're moving towards uh, better usage of computers in our everyday lives, and we use them for everything now, and it's so wonderful. I mean, it really is amazing how technology makes our lives better. Uh, but it's not quite there. And I'm not saying I know what the path that we need to take is, but I do know that I've learned a lot of lessons over the past 7 years, and I think I know what I need to build. Now, as far as what that is, I think you guys are going to have to wait and see a little bit because we need to build it. But
So, what would you call your flagship service, or your flagship solution, or what you're offering today that you think is exciting for yourself? It makes
what I'm offering right now,
yeah. So let's say this is your commercial. Like, what are you pitching right now, and what do you want to? Where do you want to be from there?
you're putting me on the spot a little bit, but
No,
I
no, no.
suppose that's your job. What am I pitching today is that we are the open source experts. We know open source. We know the open source development lifecycle. We know which projects to support, which project you should adopt if you're a corporation. We know that. We know what to look for. We know how to understand the community, how to interface with the community, so on and so forth. We're all contributors to open source projects. So we know open source. We are the open source experts, amongst others. Um, where I want to be is, like I said, I want 99% of computing to happen on an open source platform.
Do you think that's practical?
Yes.
So you think
I think not only is it practical, that it is beneficial, that it serves the consumer and the public at large and enterprises to adopt open source. That and here's the thing: I don't think it's a conversation that the end user needs to have. I don't think the end user necessarily needs to be aware that they're using open source software, but they should have the rights and the
option and
freedom
opportunity? Yeah.
that open source software conveys. They should be able to own their software. They should be able to
So-
do what
I get
what
what
they
you're
want
saying.
with it.
So it's almost like we're advocating the consumer again. Their rights to what
Yes.
they want to own in product. And
Yes.
and trust me, there's synergy there with a lot of people out there that feel like they're buying phones
People
today.
are smart. No, that's the thing. I think that business for a long time has been done on the lack of information, and we're living in an age where profiting from the lack of information is probably going to be pretty damn hard, given how information is exchanged these days. So we need to start looking at things a little bit differently, and that applies to software as well. So here's the thing about open source software. If you or some other person, and you're technical, if some non-technical person is using a piece of open source software, let's say they're using the GIMP to do photo editing, right? Which is a fun activity, right? And they're like, man, I wish the GIMP could do this. Well, guess what? It can. And there's people out there that'll help you get that done. And
So it's the community aspect that it's like we need to expand upon for the common user.
right, but it's also big business, right? I mean, IBM and Red Hat and all these companies, they frequently contribute to the Linux kernel. Why? Because it helps them drive their mission forward. It helps them build things like Watson, right? I mean, Watson didn't run on Windows, right? So there's a lot of interests that converge on open source software, and I think there are interests that the general consumer has that they don't even know that yet. They don't know yet that hey, we can benefit greatly, and once they find out, and they have, right? I mean, Firefox took over market share, and there are a couple other areas where open source has become kind of the leader, but so that's one equation, right? What it can do for the consumer, and then the other equation is other part of the equation is simply access.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So we just took a little pause real quick. So I'm just gonna start up again. You were talking. You had a sentence on mine. We were talking about open source, and I actually wanted to segue into another point, which was okay. So we talked a little bit about where you think it's heading, some of the things that Ohava is doing right now. Let's talk now. Let's peel back to the actual business element of this.
Okay.
All right. So there's a lot of kids out here. I use the word kids loosely. Kids in industry in the terms of experience. that want to be entrepreneurs, right? They have ideas, they want to incorporate, they want to start up a business. It's exciting. They want to build capital, and but what are you supposed to do when you do all that? Like, what's the next step? How do you sustain yourself? Like, how's that experience been for you?
It hasn't been easy. I mean, it took us a little bit to figure out how to be profitable for one, and
How long did it take for you to get profitable? Like, how long since the corporation did you start making a profit?
I want to say probably 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
And that's like the average. If that's the best case.
Well, and I mean it's oscillated since. I mean, sometimes we lose money, sometimes we make money. But again, for me, I don't know if I've been the traditional entrepreneur for the past 7 years. I think that yes, there was a focus on making money and paying the bills and keeping the lights on and paying rent and all that. But again, for me, the past 7 years has been about experimentation, about getting things into the
This is
marketplace.
experimentation of like technologies.
Yeah, exactly. It's about and I'm not I don't want to sound pompous or anything, but I liken it to like getting my PhD in what I want to do, and what I want to do is very narrow. It's exactly what I want to do, but I've been learning things that I need to learn in order to do exactly what I want to do. So I don't know if I'm following your traditional entrepreneurial model.
Is there one nowadays? I mean,
Sure.
there should be.
You're right.
That's the open source entrepreneur. There you go. It's like,
right.
But that's cool. So where do you do your experimentation? Do you guys set up a lab? How's the thought process, the methodology when you want to test out a new emerging technology?
We find a customer, right?
Okay.
So there is that element, right? That it's fun to experiment, but you do have to have customers because you can't operate in a vacuum, right? You have to know what people think. You have to know how things operate in the field. Things always catch on fire, and you got to know how to put them out. And you don't get that experience just in a lab. Labs are wonderful, but it's not how the real world works. So that was always the goal, right? If we found a new technology that we were excited about, we would get it into the hands of somebody that technology was applicable for. And it's really run the gamut of types of businesses and educational institutions, nonprofits, really anybody, individual consumers. So, like I said, I've done a lot of different experiments. It started with like our big thing was digital divide when we first started. So again, going back to the notion of addressing the computational deficiencies in lower income areas. We would work in DC and work with children and teach them how to use computers, and we did this thing called a boot up camp, which was where we refurbished computers and we installed Linux on them, and kids would come in and take the class, and it was a 2-week course, and they would take the computers home with them afterwards. And again, that was an experiment. It was open source in the hands of little children, right?
So this is kind of cool because like the first time I came on to the philanthropic role of open source was with one PC per child, or one laptop per child.
Yeah.
I mean, that just took off. Now everyone's trying to get build upon this framework that you can do low cost computing, low cost software, all packaged together and distributable.
It's such a powerful freaking tool, right? I mean, like if you have a computer and internet, then you can really kind of go anywhere. I mean, there are limitations.
You're saying that have all your services run on the internet. You're saying is that what opens up education?
No, I'm saying if you have the tools, right?
Okay.
These two simple tools, right? Not simple, but these two tools, a computer and network access, right? Then the possibilities, are immense in how many there are, right? There are a myriad of possibilities, and so for us that first endeavor was to make that happen, right? To find a way to get these computers into more hands that wouldn't otherwise have computers, and we learned a lot there, right? We learned about the things that maybe excite children about computers, and it's things that you would expect, right? It's games, and it's making videos, and making music or beats, or editing a photo, or
I mean that's exciting.
Chatting with their friends, like
That's a very cool. So is this going to be? Is this part of the day-to-day business, or is this more of just the?
It was. It
Okay.
was, and that's the whole thing. That it's been a ever evolving and like I said, my experiments, or not my experiments, our experiments. That's what it's been, right? We've tried a lot of different things, and some of them were profitable, some of them weren't. Some of them were philanthropical, and it again. My goal was to learn that. So if we're talking about dividends, my dividends were in the form of knowledge, and uh, now I'm in a position where I think I know what I need to build to apply that knowledge, and so we're having a kind of a transitional period in my company, and really as I've been saying kind of all along, and forgive me for repeating myself, is that those experiments have informed what I need to build.
Yeah.
Everything from that 6-year-old who doesn't have a computer at home to the doctor's office that is trying to go paperless and have good medical records, or the children's book publisher that.
So you're taking, you're still looking, you're wrapped around your original vision and goal, which was get a capable technology in the hands of those that may not have had that accessibility before, or it was too much of an investment, to really make their small business or small organization or nonprofit group really kick off. So you're like almost like an incubation of technology. Is that what you're trying to do, or?
I mean, it is what we did to an effect.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the direction that I see for us going forward.
Okay.
But
I think that's awesome. Honestly,
it is really cool. And I think
that's just hard to understand how we can be sustainable in that, unless you're really being a nonprofit entity.
Right,
or,
right, exactly,
Yeah.
right. So, I think, well, deploying to the doctor's office was a money-making endeavor. We got paid for that.
Yeah.
Or deploying to the children's book publisher, again,
Yeah.
we were paid for that. So we would have some philanthropic efforts, and we would have
Yeah.
some paid efforts. And again, it was all about deploying as much cool technology as I could into the place where it should be.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a lot of fun. I mean,
Yeah.
I get to play around with things like telephony systems like Asterisk or whatever,
Yeah.
or I get to play
Asterisk
around.
is cool. I mean, I still don't understand why people pay so much money for doing it with all this overhead.
And now there's a successor to Asterisk, but we whatever. Things like, of course, like desktop software that's really cool.
Yeah.
And when I'm teaching it, I have to learn it, right? So things.
So you're actually holding these events to teach like people in general, right?
Yeah. I mean, we don't do them like every day or
Every
anything
day,
like
yeah,
that, but we've done them. I mean, over the past 7 years, we've probably done 10, 15 of them, and
Very cool.
It's been very rewarding as well from I guess a heart perspective. It feels good. But it also feels good to make money. It really does.
Absolutely.
It does. And I honestly believe that if you're making money, you're doing a good thing. It means that people like what you do, right? They like me. They really like me. It's people vote with their wallets. So while there were some endeavors like that, a lot of our endeavors were profit driven, and it was about, again, it was semi profit driven, but it was also more about getting the experience and understanding how this type of software can work in the wild. And of course, since it was all open source, we were able to draw general conclusions about how open source software kind of works in the wild, and a lot of other people are thinking about.
Do you
this
guys
stuff
do
as
like
well, so.
this is not another on the spot question, but do you guys do white papers? Do you guys contribute like?
It's something that we're gonna be putting more emphasis on once we are building this next phase.
Okay.
Again, like I said, we've been purely experimentation for the past 7 years. Luckily enough, the experimentation has yielded enough
Results?
revenue
Oh, revenue, sorry.
revenue to keep us going. I don't think. I think that's definitely key. That you need to be able to keep yourself going, and always be seeking out those new horizons and new challenges, and really trying to attack them and finding a way to make it help you get to where you want to go.
So perfect segue to where you are going.
Yes, yes.
So now you're doing what I have been like. I don't know. I've been advocating to everyone and their mother, and I have a dream of doing, going to California, going to the mothership of
Right.
innovation,
Right.
startups, and just happiness. I guess San Francisco Bay Area.
Well, yeah.
Congratulations, and
Thank
tell me
you,
where
thank
that
you,
came about.
Thank you so much. Well, I think you put it very well. I think that the apex of the pioneering spirit has always, lay in California, right? Like historically, that's where the pioneers ended up. I mean, that was literally the last place that they could go. So I think that somehow, some way, that there's a culture and a mentality in that part of the world that is very helpful to those of a entrepreneurial mindset. And I've only heard, right? I'm going on hearsay to a degree, and I mean I do have some friends out there, but I've always wanted to be part of something special, and I think everybody does, right? And
Yeah.
from what I hear, everybody out there is like that. Everybody feels that they can change the world, and you have to be crazy to think you can change the world. But you know, I think this is actually a Steve Jobs quote, and mixed feelings towards Steve Jobs, but you do have to be a little bit crazy to change the world, and but the thing is, out there, it seems like a lot of people are a little bit crazy, and a lot of people feel that they can change the world.
There's also like an acceleration, right?
Right.
So things come and go. I mean, there's
Yeah.
the adoption rate for
Yeah.
the technology there is much different from here. I mean,
Early adopters are
yeah, they're just like
are all
boom,
over
boom,
the
boom.
place.
Yeah.
And the resources as far as personnel and capital and again, it's just that zeitgeist, of hey, we're all doing really new and interesting stuff in technology. Let's talk about what we're doing, and you get new ideas, and it's just like I don't know. They had it's been going on for a while now, but similar to the Enlightenment in France, it's
We just have to make sure that we understand that what Sahil just said was California is the Enlightenment. He just he just said that on camera.
no, but not like Nirvana's type Enlightenment. I'm talking about the historical Enlightenment.
No, I know what you mean,
right?
yeah.
Rousseau and all that. So yeah, I mean it's really exciting, and when I visited about 2 weeks ago to settle everything and all that, and I felt my pulse quicken. It's exciting. It really is, and that's neat. It's neat to be excited. But again, for me, it's all about the technology, and maybe I could do it anywhere. But you know what? If I can have nice weather and lots of people doing it or that do a similar thing around me, why wouldn't I do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think when you first told me about this, like, it clicked to me, like, okay, yes, cool,
Yeah.
and you're gonna be living in close to or the same area as your office, and
Yeah,
I think that's freaking awesome. And then that mainly made me think of what they're doing in Las Vegas, and I think we talked a little bit about
we
this.
did. It was Zappos.
Zappos,
right?
yeah. I'll say the initiative. I don't know all the details, but they're building that community, that same lifestyle, that work mentality, that your work and your play and your home can all be in
Work
an
is
ecosystem.
fun. I mean, like that's. Unfortunately, my girlfriend doesn't always understand this, but for me, work is fun. Like I love to be at work. I love to play with different technologies and to understand things and build things and.
You gotta tell me this. How much of your day job, and you can tell me, you can lie or not.
Sure.
How much of your day job is play and like play games and play work and then blend? Like you probably don't work the typical like 40 hours, right? We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
You're probably like on your own equilibrium or your own biorhythms. I mean, you probably are going at it at a higher pace, but at the same time, I'm sure you play harder too.
Yeah, I mean, I play as I'll finish tasks or something. I'll play a game or whatever. But I'm here at work at least 12 hours a day. I mean, and that's at least. So, and sometimes I'll be here from midnight to noon, or sometimes I'll be here from 9 p.m. to 3 p.m. the next day. I don't know. It's whenever I can be here, and I try it. I'm usually here every day.
So it's part of your lifestyle. It is. It's
Yeah,
like,
it is my lifestyle. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know if I'm typical or atypical or what. I just know that I love to be here. This is currently my office, but it'll be out west soon. I love to be at work, and I love the people I work with. Uh, they're also smart. I think that's what's really
How do you
exciting.
onboard somebody? How do you interview and how do you look for talent yourself? Because you're not.
I like working with people that are smarter than I am. Really, I mean, and there's so many types of intelligence, obviously, but you want to work with smart and passionate and funny and fun people. I mean, who doesn't want that, right? So, just smart, I suppose, is what. And like I said, there are many types of intelligence. So they're all kinds of smart, and you see it immediately, right? When you hear somebody talk about something that they love or they're passionate about, that they're a nerd about, then you get it. I mean, you feel the fever, right? And so I look for that. I look for the passion and and the ability to learn. People who know or people who've learned to learn, I think, are the most valuable asset you can find because technology is weird because it's always changing. I mean, what it was a month ago is not what it's going to be tomorrow. So you have to be learning always, and you have to be able to teach yourself and do all these other kind of things.
No, I get
It's not
it.
a good
Yeah.
word. But so you have to always be learning, and so I look for people who are good at learning, or that are excited about learning, that are excited about acquiring new knowledge, because it is exciting to learn new things. I mean,
It is, yeah.
everybody's felt that, right? Where you're
Yeah.
learning about whether it's dinosaurs when you're a kid, you remember like
Figuring it out for yourself is also the best thing.
yeah, or having somebody teach it to you. There is value there. I mean, but it's just that kind of spark that you get when you acquire a new piece of information. If I see that in somebody, then I want them to be part of what I'm doing. I think that it's a symbiotic relationship. I think that we I I want to build a culture, obviously, for my company where where learning is the number one kind of prime directive, if you will. Learning and new knowledge and more knowledge
So, this also we have to actually wind down. But one of the last questions I had was actually I have two last questions. One was, so what's the design element of the company? You know, you thought of this new name, for example, and then stuff like that. Where does that guidance come from? Where does that direction come from?
I'm a little bit of a control freak, so
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
You're working on a new website too, right?
Well, when we launch our new product or our new
Yeah.
selves in 6 months or whatever, yes.
And what do you feel about design in general? Maybe that's an easier question. What do you feel about design as part of your company? And are you as interested as that? Or
I mean, I think things should be beautiful. I mean,
Yeah.
why shouldn't they be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, things, but beautiful and easy to use. I mean, I don't think anybody's ever going to disagree with that. I definitely do have very strong opinions on aesthetics.
Yeah.
I think it matters how things look because things should feel nice. And so I don't know, I think it's really important. I do. But I know what I like, you know what I mean? Like, when I see it, I know I can determine if it's good or bad. And how
what does the company's name mean?
it doesn't mean anything. It's
That's what I remember now. Yeah,
yeah,
that's kind of cool. I've always been trying to, if I eventually incorporate myself, I
like to say what it means is what we're going to make it mean. So, right,
That's
we
beautiful.
are able to define the meaning of Ohava.
Okay. It's a good name. I mean, I like
Thank
it. It's
you.
got balance and everything. I'm an aesthetic nerd too. I like to do design work and
Right.
type typography. So it's cool that you made up something and then you made it into your own space, right?
Right.
So let's end it off with one last thing is what would you share? And I'm actually stealing this from a show that I watched, and we already know what that show is. But what would you give the entrepreneur out there watching this as some key advice, takeaways for them to start their own endeavors or efforts, or stuff that you've learned and learned from, that you think that you could have done better?
And we could probably do another hour or two on this, right? it's an odd position for me to be in to give advice, because I think part of the advice is that you got to go figure it out. You got to make mistakes and learn your own path and see what works for you. So that's a big part of it. But another big part of it is learning to listen. It's something that I think that it took me a while to get down, when to shut up, and listen, because there are a lot of...
You don't have ADD or anything, right?
No.
Okay, all right, just
I
checking.
don't think so.
I do, so that's why I was laughing when you said that. Like, yeah, that's one of my biggest problems. Yeah, you gotta shut up and just listen sometimes.
Well, there are a lot of smart people, and you got to listen to what they're saying, and so I don't know. It's an adventure, and it's going to be different for everybody. So it's hard to give those kind of nuggets that are going to be true for everybody. But I think listening is one of them. You should always listen. It should serve you pretty well. But beyond that, work hard. I mean, just give it your all. Give it 100%. I think that's also part of the pioneering spirit. And it depends on how far you want to go, right? I'm one of those crazy people that think I can change the world. So to me, this is an all-consuming effort. I need to be doing this, in my mind, 100 hours a week, because I need to see the world change. I want it to be different. I want 99% of people to be using open source software. So, just let your passion consume you, I suppose. And I don't know if success comes with that, but I do know that a certain level of happiness does.
Fair enough. Thank you, Sahil, and I think this is going to be an interesting adventure. Hopefully we'll get more updates for when you're over there, and maybe if I'm over there we can continue this interview.
Yeah,
maybe like 3 months from now or 5 months from now we can see where you're at.
That sounds fun.
So thank you.
Thank you.